Coming up next on the Holistic Wealth Podcast.
I'm suffering right now at home. I might as well be suffering somewhere else, like in a nicer location, in a nicer area. And so that's when I really made the decision to book a one-way ticket to Mexico in April 2023. And then literally within 3 weeks, Keisha, my health issues went away. Like 90% of my health issues went away. My skin was smooth. All my eczema and hives were gone. I was going to the washroom perfectly fine. And it was a miracle.
You're listening to the Holistic Wealth Podcast with host Keisha Blair, author of Holistic Wealth and founder of the Institute on Holistic Wealth. And now, here's your host, Keisha Blair.
Welcome to the Holistic Wealth Podcast, and I'm your host, Keisha Blair, and today we have another amazing episode for you. We have Michael Kim, and Michael is the founder of Michael Lee Kim Coaching. He's a personal finance coach, certified professional accountant, digital nomad, TEDx speaker, and host of the Personal with Money podcast. His mission is to help working young professionals have control over their money and their lives, something that really resonates and aligns with this podcast. And using his expertise with both money mindset and money management strategies, he helps his clients learn to make, save, and invest their own money to achieve their financial goals, become financially stress-free, and design a life they actually love. Michael, welcome to the Holistic Wealth Podcast. It's great having you here.
Thank you for having me, Keisha. I'm excited for our conversation today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I just wanted to start with you giving a quick intro to our listeners about your background and your money story. I find it fascinating when you talk about your money story, which I've heard before. So I just love you to share that with our listeners.
Of course. So you guys might know me today as a personal finance expert and, someone who's really good at money and all of this. But this was not always the case. I was born in Canada, but my parents were immigrants to Canada. They came to Canada when they were pretty young. And we really struggled financially as a family. My parents are constantly arguing and fighting about money. And it came to a point where we almost lost the house that we lived in when I was a kid. And so I had just so much anxiety when it came to money and finances. And, the thing is that a lot of immigrant families don't do is that they don't talk about money. And so I had all of this fear of money. And then I would ask my parents about, what's going on? Are we going to be okay? And they would say how dare you ask me about money? Don't ask me anything about this.
Right.
And so it was really traumatizing.
I can imagine. And I get into a lot of, money trauma topics as well, because it's something I'm personally interested in. Of course, I coach people with that too. So I'm just wondering from your perspective, Michael, because I know when it comes on to childhood, in terms of experiences around parents who either don't talk enough about money or, sweep things under the carpet, that it can result in some form of money trauma sometimes. I'm just wondering about your perspective on that and how that shaped you in terms of your own views around money, even before you became a personal finance expert.
Mm-hmm. It definitely played a huge, huge part because, people, all of their behaviors when it comes to money, whether you're an impulse spender, a saver, a risk taker, all of those things are really just learned behaviors. They're learned behaviors that we learn typically from our caretakers, which are oftentimes our parents. And so it was really interesting because I have an older sister who's 4 years older than me. And our approach to money is completely different, even though we had the exact same experiences. And so even though we both had this money trauma, my the way that it shaped me was to be extremely risk adverse, to be so risk adverse that I don't want to say, I want to save all my money. I don't want to take any risk. I need to learn about personal finance and how to effectively manage my money. That was my approach when it came to the situation. But for my sister, it was really interesting because she had the complete opposite effect. She went through the exact same experience and she was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to think about money. I want to avoid all of my money problems. and I'm just going to, impulse spend and not worry about what's going on. The way that you deal with money is not only just the experiences, but also really your innate personality at the same time.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so, Michael, talk about how your experiences around money evolved, because we get that a lot in terms of, the response that you had personally, where, some people just get so risk averse that they don't want to part ways with any money. So I just want to know how that evolved for you in terms of that risk aversion and how you managed to transform your personal relationship with money to the point where you now also help others.
Yeah. So I was definitely very, very risk adverse. And I think the reason for this was because there's just so much fear when it came to money. I didn't know how money worked. I didn't know where to invest. I didn't know if I was going to be safe. And so this is why I was in a constant survival mode of I need to save money. I can't spend money. I need to survive. This was really how I grew up. And it really started to shift, I would say, in university and when I graduated university. So I studied accounting and finance because I was like, okay, I really need to learn how to manage my money so that I can take care of myself and then also be able to help my parents out with their finances, because clearly they weren't really good at managing their money. And so I decided to study accounting and finance. And so I took all of the personal finance courses. I read all of the personal finance books. And I really started to adopt this different mindset when it came to money, because I started to learn from all of these amazing personal finance experts and their ways of thinking. How, maybe the scarcity mindset isn't the best way in order to build and generate wealth. Because if you're not investing your money, if you're not letting go of your money can't grow. And so by adopting these different mindsets, when I graduated school and started working in my corporate full-time job, I was finally able to be I am safe. I am okay. And now I'm okay to take some risk, take some educated risk to invest my money into the stock market, invest my money to learn from other coaches and learn additional skills to start a business. And this is really how my money story and the way that I deal with money has really evolved.
That's amazing. And so, Michael, I know, right now you're based in Toronto and that you also have kind of a semi-digital nomad lifestyle. I wanted to get into that as well because, in a previous conversation, and this is, we're holistic wealth. So we talk about health, wellness, as well as money and kind of the interactions with that and kind of living a balanced lifestyle. So I just want to segue from that, how your money story evolved to kind of you setting up a lifestyle based on the challenges that you have so that you can kind of have that balance. And I know a lot of listeners always want to hear about that transition, in terms of how you transition into that. So could you talk us through, in terms of your personal life, how you balance that in terms of your health as well as your finances?
Yeah, health and wealth is always so intertwined. It's you need money in order to take care of your health. And then you also need your health to, make money. So
Yeah.
It's really intertwined. And this is really what I learned from my experiences. So in 2021, I guess even before 2021, I was really working hard to build wealth. Within 2 years after graduating, I generated a $100,000 stock investment portfolio. And I was super driven. I started an online coaching business and I was oh my gosh, I'm doing so well. But then in 2021, I started dealing with a lot of health issues. So I started dealing with chronic eczema, hives, inflammation. It was even a lot of digestion issues. So I couldn't even go to the washroom. And so all of these toxins were just floating around my body. And it came so debilitating that some days I couldn't even move. I was almost bedridden some days. I just slept all day. I couldn't even get out of bed. And it came to a point where I was just unable to work. Now, I was focused so hard on business and building wealth that now I couldn't even make money. I had to pause my business. I had to essentially take sick leave off of work. And so it came to 2023, almost 2 years of dealing with this like chronic health issues. And then it really came to a breaking point where I was like, okay, like, do I just like live this life forever? Like, do I just have to get used to this? And like doctors wouldn't be able to help me either. I like saw countless doctors and they're just like, oh, I'm sorry, we just can't help you. Just like take this like, cream and like just lather this cream on yourself and hope for the best and like hope that you get better. That's like literally the only help that the doctors gave me. And so I really came across a pivotal decision where I was like, okay, I've always wanted to like travel and like live across the world, but my body isn't allowing me. But I realized that, hey, like I'm suffering right now at home. I might as well be suffering somewhere else at like in a nicer location, in a nicer area. And so that's when I really made the decision to book a one-way ticket to Mexico in April 2023. And then literally within 3 weeks, Keisha, my health issues went away. Like 90% of my health issues went away. My skin was smooth. All my eczema and hives were gone. I was going to the washroom perfectly fine. And it was a miracle. So ever since then, I've been traveling around the world in other parts of the world from Mexico, Southeast Asia, Korea, all of these places. And it's so important because the reason why I've been able to do this was because I did set up my finances up correctly. I had an investment portfolio. I had emergency funds. I had insurance. I had an online business where I can make money anywhere in the world. And it's only because of my finances that I had the ability to move abroad to prioritize my health. And so that's why I say that health and wealth is always so intertwined.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I want to backtrack a bit because living in Canada can be stressful. In North America in general, we live in very high stress environments. And I know many people who are listening in are thinking, okay, you're living in Toronto. What do you think is the difference? What is the difference with the environment here in North America that you can move to Mexico and within 3 weeks, the hives and everything, the digestive issues, everything clears up? What is it with these different environments that causes this? And what was the reason for that?
Yeah, Keisha, this is a question that I'm still trying to answer myself because each time I come back home to like see family and see friends and see my partner, I literally like get all of the hives, all of the eczema, all of the digestion issues again, like within a few weeks. Yeah. So there's definitely something in the environment in Canada and where I'm living that's causing this. And so I have a few like suspicions. So one thing is the food. Mm-hmm. So the food in Mexico is just very, very clean.
Yes.
I would go to the farmer's market and like I was living in this little town called Puerto Escondido, where it's like not as touristy as like Cancun or Puerto Vallarta. And I would go to the farmer's market and buy like carrots. Mm-hmm. And I would put the carrots in the fridge and then within a few days, it starts like browning. And like it starts going bad. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is interesting because back home in Canada, you buy carrots and they last for months in the fridge.
Forever.
Yeah, forever. They never go bad. And so there must be some sort of pesticides or genetically modified food that we are eating in Canada and in the US. So that's one thing. The other thing is the climate. So in Mexico, the climate is very humid. You live by the ocean. So there's like a lot of like fresh air. And and in Canada, it's like, especially in our winters, it's very dry. We have these heaters like blasting off in our homes all the time. So there's that. And then the last thing is that I'm suspecting, and my naturopathic doctor thinks this is the case as well, is mold. So in Canada, and especially like, it's more so like related to the place that you're living in, but my home is a bit of an older home that I live with my family. And so there could be mold that's like in the basement, that's like being spread around through all of the like heaters and all of the AC that's just spreading around all around the house. And so mold has so many various can cause so many various health issues, from like allergies to, even like some like brain issues and all of that stuff. So I find that even like living in my aunt's place, who's still in Canada, is not as bad, but it's better than living at my family's home. So there's just so many various potential causes of these health issues. And I find just moving to Mexico is like, it just gets rid of everything because it's a completely new environment.
Yeah, no, for sure. And a lot to think about there for those listening in. You're thinking about not only food, your environment, and, like indoor air quality and all of that. Like we were in Mexico just in April for our anniversary. And I do agree with you, like completely different, in terms of food. And like I ate so much more natural, organic food while I was there for just that week. So much more healthy than I would eat back home here in Canada. So I completely get that. And in terms of the environment, like absolutely, these tropical environments where we spend so much more time in nature, so much less pollution. Like I wrote a chapter in Holistic Wealth about my sabbatical, my 1-year sabbatical when I left Canada, I went to Jamaica. Same experience with eating organic, just feeling so much more healthier. I mean, picking fruit from trees, picking mint leaves and like different kinds and varieties for just like herbal tea. Like in winter, we don't realize how much time we spend indoors, how much it affects our health and wellness, not only, physical, but mental health. So like, I just wanted to ask about that because I know so many people in North America are seeking that balanced lifestyle. And a lot of people too are looking to retire overseas, somewhere more tropical, especially Canadians. So I know there's that interest there. But Michael, you mentioned your investment portfolio, and I want to get back to that piece because I think that's the other important piece, which I also talk about in Holistic Wealth in terms of getting that right, because that enables you, as you said, to have that lifestyle that you want to live. So tell us how you structured yours, what you invest in. You mentioned insurance, you mentioned emergency savings. If somebody's listening in right now, what practical tip in terms of how you set your investment portfolio up? What did you do to set yourself up for that type of lifestyle that you live?
Yeah, so in terms of building the $100,000 portfolio, I built it within 2 years. And the way that I did this was by living at home. So like, first of all, keeping expenses low. So I was living at home with my family where I didn't have to pay rent. I had the choice to like live in like downtown Toronto in a nice condo and rent. But I was like, that lifestyle, I think building wealth right now, especially in the beginning of my career, is probably more important than that. And so I was really able to keep my expenses low, which is why I was able to save about $1,000 a month or almost $2,000 a month. And in addition to that, once I was like, okay, my expenses are low, how do I now make more money so that I can save more money? And that's when I started. First, I decided I was only making about $50,000 at my first job that I was working at. And so a year after working at this job, I decided to apply for another job at a fintech company in the finance department. And I got a $30,000 salary increase. So once I got that salary increase, I'm like, oh my gosh, like before I was only saving $1,000. Now I could save like $1,500 to $2,000 every single month. And so that was one way to increase income. Another way that I increased my income was by starting a side hustle. So back in 2020, I started my personal finance coaching business where I saw a lot of my friends who were graduating, who were working, who had no idea how to manage their finances. And so I was like, hey, do you want some help? And so after helping some friends for free, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like life-changing for so many people. I got to help everyone else. And so I started coaching people, making, an extra, $1,000, $2,000 a month just from the side hustle that went directly into savings. And so that's how I was first able to build my $100,000 investment portfolio within 2 years. And then in terms of what's actually in the investment portfolio, I have kind of two strategies. The first strategy, which is like 50% of the portfolio, so about $50,000 of the portfolio, is more of a passive investing strategy. So this is the investing strategy that I get most of my clients and like most people to get started with because it's so easy, it's so simple, it's really hard to mess up. And so a passive investing strategy is essentially you invest in ETF, so exchange traded funds, which is investing into the entire stock market where your investments are very diversified. But it's a little bit better than mutual funds because you're able to have lower management fees. So the average mutual fund management fee is about 2.5%. The average ETF management fee is about 0.5%, like 0.5%. And this may not seem like a big difference, but like you're going to be investing for the rest of your life. This is going to make a huge, huge difference in how much money you actually get to keep at the end of the day. And then the other investment strategy that I used in terms of my investment portfolio is a stock options trading strategy. So this is a lot more complicated, a lot more riskier, and a lot more difficult to implement. And I actually had to hire an investing coach. I paid about $10,000 in order to learn this investing strategy from him. But with this strategy, I'm able to generate about a 1 to 4% return per month. And so this really helps in terms of getting passive income when I'm traveling, when I'm working abroad, because now I have this extra income that I can use for living expenses or to just like grow my investment portfolio. So this is kind of how I structure my finances.
Yeah. So, Michael, when you live abroad, and I remember us, before we got started here, I know you're heading to Mexico shortly. How do you live? Where do you live? Do you rent there? How is your lifestyle set up? And even in terms of your business, can you give us an idea of when you go there, how you set up your life, how long you spend, and how your business works while you're in Mexico?
So thankfully, with my business, I do personal finance coaching. So I just work with one-on-one clients for now, where we just meet on Zoom and then I coach them. And so this business is essentially able to fund my life. Like I don't have to rely on my investment portfolio too much on like getting passive income or like, to cover my daily expenses. My business covers all of my expenses that I make. And so luckily it's a fully remote business that I built so that I can literally work from anywhere in the world. I can work from Mexico, I can work from Southeast Asia, really anywhere. And so right now I'm 27 now, and I've always loved traveling. I love traveling around the world. There's so many places that I haven't been yet and that I want to see. And so for now, I'm really living this digital nomad lifestyle where I live in one place for about 1 to 2 months. And then I move to another place for 1 to 2 months. And so for now, I'm just doing like Airbnb or like, booking.com, just like more longer term stays, which is also a really great way in order to reduce expenses because, a lot of people think traveling is very expensive. But it's like, yeah, if you do like a quick like backpacking, travel vacation where you're staying in luxury hotels for like, just a few weeks, then yeah, that's pretty expensive. But if you just stay in one Airbnb for 1 month, it's like 50% cheaper than if you were to do like week by week. So this is kind of how I've been structuring my life of just choosing where I want to live based on my health, based on, where I want to visit that inspires me. So just a few months ago, I came back from a 5 to 6 month trip in Southeast Asia. So I was in Vietnam, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, and I also went to South Korea. And I'm really just going to places where my skin thrives, where my health thrives, and then if my health is doing really good, my business does amazing as well. When my health is not good, my business does not so great either. And so this is kind of how I've been structuring my life and my finances. I think in the future, I do want to do more like longer term stays. I think like if I find one place that I really like, I might, let's say, rent for like 6 months out of the year and like have more of a home base. Mm-hmm. But for now, I'm really living this nomadic lifestyle where I just want to see the world and see what's out there.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I'm sure our listeners find that very interesting, especially the travel part, just because we're talking about money, Michael, and spending. And and saving. I know that you took the financial identity quiz that's on the Institute on Holistic Wealth website. Now, I love asking our guests to share the results of that quiz, because even on this podcast, when guests share the results and kind of talk about their spending, saving, and investment philosophy, when they share the results, there's so many insights around their personal lives and how their money stories were shaped. And just by taking the quiz, we've had some amazing guests who said, you know what, even just by taking the quiz, it got me to think about just my life in general and why I do the things I do, why I make the decisions I make. So many of our listeners identify with one or more, or, in terms of one personal financial identity. So it's often very fun to hear what our guests are and kind of, how they spend, save, and invest. So Michael, if you share your results with us and just tell us your thoughts around what your results were and how that aligns with kind of your personal finances shape up. Like, I'd be interested to hear about that.
Yeah. So interestingly, I just did the quiz and I got risk taker, which I was so surprised because as you guys have just listened,
right.
I was not a risk taker, especially growing up. I was extremely risk adverse. Like I remember I could not spend money. Like I would go to the mall and like, should I buy this shirt, this $10 shirt? Oh my God, no, I can't. Like I can't spend money. Like that was literally me growing up. And I think to see myself as a risk taker now, it's like, that's actually pretty accurate because, starting a business and, traveling abroad and, doing all of these like investments in the stock market, it's maybe not the most like, risk adverse type of thing. It's actually quite a big risk in order to do this. Like not everyone is doing this.
Yeah.
But what I always like to say and what I like to tell my clients is that risk is relative. Risk is really based on your skill level. If you're really skilled at something, it's not risky at all. If you're not skilled at something and you still do it, then that's pretty risky. Analogy that I like to use is swimming. So it's like if you go into the ocean and you don't know how to swim, that's pretty risky. Like you might drown. But if you go into the ocean and you're like an Olympic swimmer and you're like so good at swimming, then that's not risky at all. And it's the exact same thing when it comes to like starting a business or investing. It's like I have built the skill of I know how to build a business. I know how to invest my money. And because I developed these skills, it's not risky to me. So it might seem really risky for someone else, right? Like, oh my gosh, you're going full time in your business and you're investing in the stock market. That's super risky. But for me, because I've invested a lot of time and energy and money into these skills, it isn't risky for me. And so I think that's like a really great perspective shift that a lot of people can have is that, investing doesn't have to be risky. Starting a business doesn't have to be risky if you take the time and energy to invest in the skills so that you can learn about it. And then it won't be risky to you anymore.
Yeah, no, for sure. And of course, you mentioned risk being relative. And of course, with your lifestyle and your family type, I'm guessing that you don't have kids, you're not, you're single. So I know for many people listening in with families, definitely taking 5 months off to kind of explore Asia with like kids in tow, that would be a whole different ball game. So definitely in terms of our lifestyle and our families and kind of the obligations that we have that might color things a bit differently. But Michael, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. Can you just tell us where to find you, your website and social media?
If you guys want to learn more about me, you can follow me on Instagram or YouTube at Michael Lee Kim. You can also check out my website at michaelleekim.com. And also, I have a podcast called the Personal with Money Podcast, where recently I just had Keisha on the podcast, where we had an amazing conversation there. So if you guys want to learn more about some personal money stories of how some people have been able to achieve amazing things and design a life that they actually love, then feel free to check out that podcast called the Personal with Money Podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And do check out that episode with me on Michael's podcast. Yeah, as he said, we had an amazing chat. So once again, Michael, thanks so much for joining us. I know that this was not only inspirational for a lot of people listening in, but educational too. So thanks for being here.
Thank you, Keisha. Have a good rest of your day.
Absolutely. You too.
The Holistic Wealth Podcast with Keisha Blair is brought to you by. Have you joined the Institute on Holistic Wealth? If you haven't already, what are you waiting for? Choose your membership plan at the Institute on Holistic Wealth/memberships to join. As a member, you'll get access to free worksheets, advice, coaching, and an intentional design workshop. As you start to live a more holistically wealthy lifestyle, you'll want to stay for a very long time. So go to Institute on Holistic Wealth/memberships to join. If you haven't read the book yet, pick up a copy of the award-winning best-selling Holistic Wealth 36 Life Lessons to help you recover from disruption, find your life purpose, and achieve financial freedom.